Let us take a moment to close our eyes and settle in. Feel your feet on the floor and feel your spine lengthen up, stretching to your full height, opening into all that you are. And as I do this for myself, feeling that strength and that power of that one source that is already in me, it is flowing endlessly with that love like a river, like a stream that just never ends. It is boundless. It is that love, it is that power, it is that wisdom that flows everywhere, and it is present everywhere. There is no place where this is not, because God is all there is. And so everyone is in that. I am one with that. All are one with that, because there is nothing else to be but that source, but that love, but that power, but that one. And in that flow that always moves, we are all invited, no one is excluded, to step up into that wholeness that is our very nature. Sometimes we forget, and so we can just step up and be in that. Reach to the higher height. Feel that energy flow. It is your energy, because we are all of that. And I'm grateful to know these truths for myself, for all present, for all throughout the entire universe. Everything, seen and unseen, is that. And I release that into that divine mind, into that law that always says yes. It knows how. I don't need to worry about that. And with that, I say, and so it is.
So it is. So today we're talking about, this whole month we're looking at the theme of a grand rising. How can we expand? How can we be more? How can we rise up? Feel that within you, that there's something that wants to rise within you, and say yes to it. And this month we're talking about holy boldness. Because if you want a grand rising, eventually you got to step across the line and be bold. Yes? 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 Come on, I want to hear that boldly. Yes, thank you. And so today we're talking about higher heights. One of my favorite Zen sayings, as many of you know, is when you reach the top of a mountain, keep climbing. Keep climbing. And the reason for that is when you reach the top of a mountain, you get to view a vista that you never had before. You see more than you could have seen from where you were. And so when you reach the top of your mountain, whatever that is, you suddenly find out that there's a more expansive landscape. There's a more expansive place and way to be. So how many of us want to get to higher heights? Yeah, great. This past week, Richard Rohr wrote this: psychology and spirituality come together beautifully to show us that our growth is going somewhere. The trajectory is toward union. Union with God/reality, union with the self, our mind, our heart, our body, union with others, and union with the cosmos, the planet, the stars, the whole. All seem to agree that the beginning levels of our consciousness are are dualistic, while the later or deeper levels are non-dual and unitive. We all tend to start off dualistic. Me, you, us, them, all that stuff. And as we grow into a more unitive consciousness, more non-dual. And he goes on to say, you'll love this part, the only way to move from stage to stage is basically by some form of wounding, failure, or darkness. How many of you want to go to higher heights? all seem to agree that we have to go through a period of unknowing, which is uncomfortable, to know at a more mature level. And he adds a parenthesis, which sounds like faith to me. We all have to go through this. So, how many still want to go for higher heights? Yeah, good. I love you guys. We're in for it. On the same day that he wrote that, the daily reading from Mark Nepo's Book of Awakening was, live for the air after pain, and there will be no reason to run. And he was talking about when he was going through his cancer treatment and his cancer diagnosis, and they were doing bone marrow biopsies, which he said was the most painful thing that he ever went through. And he said he dreaded them when he had to go through this, and he built up this whole thing about it until one day he woke up and realized that he was going through about 40 to 50 seconds of pain and making that his whole life about that. Instead of, he says, as soon as it was over, it's breathing this air, this new air, this fresh air. And so it's to recognize that we don't have to be stuck in the pain, the wounding, the difficulty of the journey, but to keep our mind, to keep our freshness, our consciousness, on the freshness, on what's new, on where we want to go. Keep our vision where we want to go, and not the temporary inconvenience of the process. We all go through dark nights of the soul if we're going to grow, yes? Okay? Yes. Evolution, which is the expansion of the expression of spirit in form, is always moving forward. It's always moving forward, always for greater expression of spirit's nature. Evolutionary scientists talk about, many of us were taught when, of a certain age, were taught when we were younger, that evolution was just this nice, smooth, orderly process that went on. Where they've discovered since then that evolution really is, you sit at a plateau and all of a sudden something that they call punctuated equilibrium happens, which means your world gets rocked in some way or another. And then you grow up, you lift up to something new, or you don't. In the species that don't, they're either extinct or they're left behind as a minor species while the other part of the species that did make the leap goes forward. So we can either flow with this evolution, or we can cling, kicking and screaming to our limited sameness. Which one do you want to do? Yes. Trust me, it's easier in the long run. It's more difficult in the short run. It's easier in the long run. So we get to choose between our adventurous, curious, expanding soul and our conditioned ego wanting to play small and safe. But our ego identity is a temporary construct. Yes? It's a temporary construct made of stories, beliefs, and memories, whereas our soul is infinite. Our connection with the oneness. And is what, in alignment with the divine nature, propels us forward into a greater expression of life. That soul of us is what is spurring our evolution. I love, Michael Beckwith has a phrase that many of you know that I love, and it's that a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. Bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. Though I don't always love the experience of that. Yes. So the soul, the vehicle through which the infinite expresses, calls us to higher heights, to more spirit. And this call is a hero's journey. I want you to nod to yourself. In fact, look at your neighbor and say, you are a hero on a journey. And this journey grows and expands us. It's a journey on which we learn that we're greater than we knew. Yes? One of my favorite hero's journey stories is The Hobbit. And the hero of the story, Bilbo Baggins, who's the Hobbit, lives in a neat, orderly home in the neat, orderly Shire, a perfect symbol for the way our ego would love our life to be. No adventures, no dangers, nothing untoward happening. Everything is calm and orderly. And the greatest growth happens to their waistlines. Now, we tend to chuckle at this, but how many of us as religious scientists pray for ease and grace and order and harmony? When's the last time you prayed for an adventure? When's the last time you prayed for expansion, for an experience to support you in discovering that you are greater than you know? Take a breath. Most of the time, we, like Bilbo, have to be dragged kicking and screaming out the door. Yes? Kicking and screaming out the door of our comfy lives onto the road of growth. Take a class? Oh no, it's an inconvenient time. And I took a class a long time ago. I don't need another one. And on we go. But to go to higher heights, we must, well, go. Yes? We must go out the door and onto the path, not knowing where it leads, nor what we will become in the process. And like Bilbo, we turn to the wizard within, the wise self within, and ask, can you guarantee my safety? Can you guarantee that I'll return? And the wise wizard looks back and says, no. And if you do return, you will not be the same as you were before. That's the hero's journey. And right about now, your Bilbo nature, and we all have one, is saying, I think I'll just stay here, safe amongst my books, my teas, my food, and all the comforts of home. I get to continue with second breakfasts, and then teas, and all that stuff. Unfortunately for Bilbo, his lineage was such that on the Baggins side, he came from this proper hobbit family, but on his mother's side, he came from a family known as the Tooks. And the Tooks were one of the few hobbit families that actually did go out and have adventures. And that's what he was like when he was young, and that side of him eventually won out. See, we all have, when we're young, a Tookish side, yes? A side that wants to go adventure, wants to go explore, wants to go play and be curious. And eventually we get domesticated, as Don Miguel Ruiz says in the Four Agreements, to playing it safe, to being cautious. What I know about us, you and me, is that by virtue of being here in this place, we have a Tookish side to us. Yes? So you're being here in this center instead of the conservative religion or non-religion that you grew up in. Yes? So somewhere you said, I want a little bit of an adventure. I want something different. And that's why you're here. So we have some Tookishness within us, that adventure. That adventure that calls us to higher heights, and eventually we have to say yes or die of overstuffed boredom. I think it was Pink Floyd who called that comfortably numb. And so we're willing to go through the letting go, the wounding, the failure, and the darkness that the journey requires, hoping and having faith in the treasure that lies at the end of the journey, of every hero's journey. And often, though, that treasure is different than the one we thought we were going for. Yes? It's a deeper, it's a more profound treasure, and we become a deeper, more profound person, and that's the real treasure for the journey. We become richer in previously unknown ways. So when we begin the journey to higher heights, we have an idea of what those heights are, but things change along the way. Have you ever noticed? And often higher heights become deeper depths. So let's explore that direction for a moment. And this is not the depths of depression and pain and misery and suffering, not that. But the idea of each of us being like a great untamed sea, obedient to currents that are seldom seen, to quote Mark Nepo. If we are going to build high, we must go deep. You know, if you're going to build a one-story building, you don't need much of a foundation. If you're going to build a skyscraper, you need a deep foundation, yes? So let's see what we can learn from this metaphor of us being like a deep ocean. The writer Joel Adji says, even the clearest water seems opaque at great depth. Even the clearest water, seems opaque at great depth. So first consider that the deepest water in the ocean is as clear as the water on the surface. Just as clear. Even though it remains unseeable to the human eye, to the human ego, bobbing on the surface. So the nature of the infinite presence is the same in the depths, at the surface, and at all points in between. The nature of the infinite presence is the same from bottom to top. Secondly, our ability to see into the deep, into our depths, is dependent on the calmness or turbulence of the surface. Yes? And third, the depth and the surface of the sea are one and inseparable, just as the spirit within and the psychology personality without of each of us, our surface personality, are inseparable. Our oneness and our who we are in the world is not different, is not separate. It's all a oneness. Breathe that in for a moment. Yesterday in our retreat, we took a personality test, or before, to prepare for that. And so we have a personality. This is how I am on the surface, how I relate to the surface, to that which is just around me. But at depth, we're all the same. We're all connected. We're all one of that one ocean. We just have unique ways of expressing that. So depth, our spiritual nature, calls to us. It causes us to rise and swell, to dip and crash. And yet no matter what happens on the surface, that deep spirit within, that soul within remains unaffected. We've all gone through experiences in life, yes? We've all had high waves and deep crashes, or maybe little waves and little crashes, whatever. But we've gone through stuff, but the underneath stays the same. I remember going through a relationship breakup. As you know, I've gone through lots of those. I've much experience in that. In the middle of it, while I was feeling really, it was a particular night, I was driving away from a friend's house, feeling really sad, really grieving, and all of a sudden felt this just joy within that was deeper than the sadness. That was not affected by my relationship stuff on the surface. Our surface, our human nature is always in motion like the surface of the ocean. And it's moved both by underlying currents, by the soul journey that wants to come through us, and by, you might say, the overlying winds, the stuff that's all around us, the stuff that's churning us up. Does anybody have stuff churning them up? Okay. And then we reflect everything around us also. So no matter how calm or churned up we are never cut off from our deepest depths. No matter what's happening out here, we're not cut off from our deepest depths, which inevitably guide us to our highest heights. So the question is, will you go? Will you go on this journey? Will you embark on this journey? Actually, I would say you already have embarked on the journey by being here. Will you continue the journey? Will you continue to go and expand the journey? Will you ride the waves? Will you walk the path? I heard a yes. And then thank you. And Buffy says, perfectly expressed from that ego self, well, okay, if I have to. I love our practitioners, they're honest. So 3 practices this week. I'm going to work you hard this week. We have 3 practices. Number 1, ask yourself, am I truly willing to go on a hero's journey? Am I really willing to go? Am I willing to let go of the current stability to climb to higher heights? See, I can't get to something where I want to go by clinging to where I am now. Sorry. Am I willing to go to higher heights? Secondly, second practice, if so, if you say no on the first question, just ignore the rest of this. But if you've said yes, and I trust that you have, how can I raise my vision to see beyond my current limited vision, beyond my current limited horizon, to see something greater? See, if I don't know that there's something greater out there, even if I don't know what it is, if I don't lift my vision and say I'm willing to see further than I have seen before, if I don't do that, I'm stuck in just this down here that I can see. Are you willing to lift up your vision? You know, in the Hobbit story, Bilbo climbs a tree while they're in the enchanted forest of Mirkwood, where everybody else is running around dazed and confused and kind of lost. And he finally says, I need to get up. And climbs the tree up into the fresh air and can finally see the target that they're aiming for, the Misty Mountain. So we have to climb. We have to raise our vision. So that's the second practice, is to raise your vision. And then the third is to set a conscious intention to expand. I'm working with the people who we're co-creating the workshops for the CBEC summer camp. That's a regional CSL summer camp, which you're all invited to, by the way. It's on our registrations on the website and in the e-news every week. And we're working with a book called The Lightmaker's Manifesto. And one of the processes that she invites us to do is to every morning set a conscious intention for our day. What is my intention this day? To have an overarching intention, and then what is my intention this day to take me closer to that? So that's our third practice, is to set a conscious intention to expand, understanding that consciousness responds to intention. Are you willing to play with those three practices? Yes. One is ask and hopefully say, yes, I'm willing to go. Number two is raise your vision. And three is set a conscious intention. So I want to close with a quote from Rumi, a little poem from Rumi. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. And I would say what your soul really wants. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. I invite you this week to not go back to sleep. And I'm not talking about getting a good night's rest. I'm talking about mentally, consciously. So we have an affirmation to remind us of that. Say this with me. I say yes to bringing to higher heights. Spirit within guides me. I say yes to rising to higher heights. Spirit within guides me. And so it is. Thank you.